Xavier Epps. So I'm currently a sophomore junior by credit at University of Texas, Dallas. Obviously in Json school, majoring in finance with a minor in statistics. So that's my background educationally. But me as a person, so I'm from Dallas, Texas.
Okay.
Was born and raised in Virginia. So Richmond, Virginia, Central Virginia, and then lived in that area, then Northern Virginia. Then my dad's job, military, moved a lot. So I lived in South Korea for about maybe as a baby, and then Germany about 3 to 4 years. Then I moved to the States after that when I was about 7. So Germany by far my favorite country overseas. So I came back over here. Since then, I've been jumping around from Virginia to Georgia to Florida, back to Virginia, and I went to school in San Antonio, high school in 10th grade. And then after 3 years there, obviously I ended up coming to UTD. About 2 years ago, I've been in Dallas, residing over here for about 2 years in Richardson. So all over the map, but I've been in Texas for about 4 years. That's just kind of where I've been from and grew up. But
Oh wow, man, you've been all over the place. So you're Mr. Worldwide in that sense. Very cultured, would you say?
Yeah, I would say well traveled. I would say that for sure.
Yeah. Why did you choose to ultimately come up to JSOM and UTD?
Okay, no, great question. So I originally came here because I went to high school in San Antonio, right? So I knew that I wanted to pick a school that was in state, right, for sure. And so obviously that being said, I looked at my choices of Texas schools, and UTD not only had the best just fit, as well as like it kind of actually interesting. It meant all the things that I wanted from a school. So when I say fit as like personality wise, fit as in financially, fit as in like I guess goal oriented wise. So JSON made the best fit because it is a top 35 business school. It's a good school for my kind of passions, and it's young and new, innovative, and not scared of like it's really traditional.
Yeah.
So it really fits my personality a lot. That being said, really quick to move, very funable, very adaptive, right? So UTD as a whole. So JSON made a lot of sense for me compared to other options in the public schools in Texas. So I know obviously the big competitors are the UT Austins and your A&Ms and all that other school, but UTD's youth was a plus to me. It's infancy, but as well as it's just forward thinking kind of mindset, and always just turn up the ranking. So it fit my personality and my fit, and I'm here, and I'm happy to be in JSON.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like it's at UTD you can actually leave an impression on the campus when you leave, whereas these bigger universities you kind of just shuffled into the mix. You're kind of like a number. Exactly. No, yeah, I totally agree with you. So you are a finance major, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Where are you looking to take that? What's your career path? Where are you trying to head?
Okay. Well, no, that's a really good question. So currently this summer I'm taking a fellowship program actually up in New York. I'm looking at with JP Morgan this summer. I'm looking to have like a fellowship program up there. So that's gonna be like an asset wealth management. So I'm taking the finance and looking into getting things like I guess obviously the banking world, and I'm really looking at quantitative finance too. I'm getting affiliated with this new club that's a JSON that I'm trying not to talk too much about because it's definitely new. We're definitely working on developing.
Oh yeah.
It's in a club that works with like financial tech stuff like that. So I'm looking at a club now. So I'm looking at quantitative finance, some data analysis stuff. That's why my minor in stats kind of comes out there. But that's kind of what I'm looking for to study and getting into. So that kind of quantitative look with spin on finance, data analyst, stuff like that.
Are you trying to aim to enter like investment banking scene, or are you trying to stay with the asset management side?
Yeah, so that's the kicker there. So I would say I kind of know where I want to kind of angle myself going to, but also I'm still learning and doing a lot of stuff to expose myself to a lot of different types of finance. So for now, I'm leaning towards asset management, portfolio management, stuff like that. Those kind of things. Investment banking is enticing, interesting. I don't know enough about it yet to make a poor decision, but I am definitely angling myself to looking at that investment portfolio managing. But IB is something that's interesting, and obviously I need to learn more about it. But at UTD, you get a lot of different kind of perspectives of finance. So I think that's why it's a good thing. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So you're headed towards the asset management side. You're looking towards especially high finance, especially New York. So you're trying to go into the larger markets, I would say. So with that being said, I know that UTD and JSOM has prepared you for these high level jobs. Yeah.
No, I'm with you. So that's a great question. That's something that I've approached and understood. So for JSON, for sure, one thing I can say, like, truthfully, as being a JSON student, and even before knowing I was coming to JSON, it's just reading and researching the school and what it provides to you is very important, right? You have to come here kind of knowing how and where to find resources, because it's for me personally, I was sure I was going to major in finance until about a couple months, almost a year ahead. But I really had a passion for economics at first, where I thought I was going to look at economics. But when I discovered that economics was not in the business school, I knew that I wanted to be in JSOM because the resources are very available and attainable, and they're there, you know. So I wanted to get in around that environment. So finance makes a lot of sense, but you have to know where to go in JSOM to find these certain things. And definitely, the school at UTD has a lot of those, and it's a little more accessible to find in JSOM. So kind of knowing who to find, who to talk to, what clubs, what resources to find, helps you prepare yourself for these positions, because they're there and available for you. Maybe it'll be a little bit harder and stand out a little bit more to get into it. But weirdly for me, it prepared me, because you can stand out and prepares you to.
Right.
With classes in JSOM. So weirdly enough, your preparation with UTD energy and JSOM prepares you for some interviews and certain places you work at, because you kind of have to stand out and work on your candidacy, work on your resume, stuff like that, to get the positions. So weirdly, it does help prepare yourself. Maybe just not as clear on paper, but I think it does.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I feel like I agree with you that UTD just is this environment that is competitive at the same time that it is, it kind of helps you grow.
Yeah, like nurturing.
Yeah, because
for sure.
Some of these bigger, you look at these bigger universities and you try to see who would you even compete against.
Yeah.
Whereas at UTD, you know who you're going against. You know the kids that are applying for the same jobs as you, but they're also the same people that help you out.
Exactly.
So I totally agree with you on that aspect. When looking at the finance industry, I feel like, and there's like a glaring issue, and that there's the lack of diversity. And I feel like a lot of people note that, and a lot of people highlight that. What are your thoughts about the representation of people of color in this industry?
Well, off the bat, it's definitely striking and obvious. It's something that you can't really avoid. It's apparent that across finance industry, compared to other industries, it's something that lacks in diversity, and like just in a general gist, the disparity is clear pretty much. But that being said, though, I definitely would say there's a lot more that could be potential as well, right? So a lot of companies are like offering different things and ways to increase the diversity, as it is something that's need to be done and taken more seriously above our generation of candidates, right? So I definitely notice that finance or industry itself is doing a lot of things to try to attempt to reach out the diversity. That being said, the problem still exists. Now, see, I use the word problem there, and I do think that for diversity is very important, right? I would like to represent the demographics of the country and that city in those companies as well. So it is important because it enhances diversity, not only of just race and gender, but thought is a key thing too.
Right.
There's a lot of companies. Yeah, exactly. So like, just I think that makes it much more. You get a cohesive product and cohesive ideas and projects, because when you get people that think differently, you get different and unique outcomes, right? So it's an important thing. I know it's emphasized by certain companies, but for me, looking at JP Morgan, for example, Summer, I know that they have a lot more programs that are ahead of other companies that look for certain, demographics.
Right.
Like I said, whether it could be gender, race, or even types of people. So it's something that's important. It's emphasized. Some companies do it better than others. But in the finance industry, it's definitely a problem that is trying to be corrected, but way easier said than done, and it's hard to navigate sometimes, truthfully. But that being said, it's something that's been emphasized and should be continued to. But better other industries, it is not yet totally. But that being said, there's a lot of potential and growth there. So
I mean, if you look at it, a lot of these like bigger banks and whatnot have been offering a mass amount of solid diversity programs. There's a lot for sophomores all the way up to these graduate students. So the industry is definitely trying to move its way towards that. It's just a matter of time when you see like real equal representation, which I mean, I guess is what we're all trying to fight for. So just tacking onto that, how do you think that UTD has prepared you to come into this environment where you are definitely people of color are definitely going to be the minority here, and how has UTD fostered this community to build up and overtly hurdle that obstacle?
UTD is an interesting kind of like demographic situation, right? So UTD, compared to other schools in public schools in Texas, right, it has like a kind of a healthier mix of diversity, where that'd be like a strong Asian American population, a strong obviously white population and as well as Latino population. So it has a different demographic makeup than most public schools in Texas. So weirdly, it kind of I would say weirdly, I say unintentionally sometimes it does prepare you for this shifting demographics that you notice in certain business places, right? So it kind of does enhance your ability to be adaptable to different environments and, like I said, the changing ones. So that being said, especially compared to public schools and other options in Texas, it seems to be more practical to what we're going to than what was in the past decade generations of candidates in certain companies. So, like I said, compared to other public schools in Texas, the different demographics, they have a large population and things that are shifting and not the same thing that you would see in 2040 than you would see in 1980, right? So, so stuff like that is why UTD can prepare you for things you might see in the future and companies doing now. So that's kind of why what stands out a little bit UTD, and it's a good thing for sure. To be around people like that, like I said, not just race and gender, but the thought. You'll see the different people that think differently and speak differently. So and I even touch on the languages as well. Like a lot of people here. I don't know if it's like I don't know if the truth stat about it, but UTD has a lot of people here that English is second language to them, or they're bilingual or trilingual, which is really fascinating about this school. It's very common for all. I guess half people I know for sure speak a different language. Other than English. I think that's really cool and something that's shifting across the country as a whole. It's people are going to get even more linguistically talented, other not just English as well in the future. So UTD does prepare you for that at least. So stuff like that is just why I think it's helpful for sure that Json does that.
I mean, you brought up some fascinating points. You've mentioned the idea of like diversity of thought and diversity of this more of the intellectual attributes that these different candidates could bring. I definitely feel like that is an overlooked aspect. I feel like a lot of these companies are just, checking a box if they need to or whatever. So the fact that you brought that up is very interesting. Where do you think that some of these skills would look like, and some of these like different traits of knowledge and more of the intellectual side that varying candidates are able to bring?
Okay, well, I think that's a great question, and I'm glad you asked me that. I was thinking more as it kind of touches on different like personalities as well that lead to these thoughts, right? So you have people that come in the firm and they could be extroverted, they could be introverted, right? You can start even from there. And so like just off that as which is a simple kind of, as qualifier, but people that have different like even social impacts or even family structures, right? Or something like that, as simple as that, right, in the environment, makes them approach problems differently. So when it comes to like intellectual problems or problems facing firms now, right? It could be solving a profit issue or a HR issue, whatever you have there. People from different backgrounds and interests are going to look at it differently, right? That becomes personality. That could be their environment. So that could be from looking in a more bigger picture aspect of like if it's assessing a profitability issue, right? Somebody would be like, well, maybe it's derived from somebody's health, right? Like focus on different parts of a problem to get to the point. It could be like I said, trying to increase profits for the next quarter, right? It could be like, well, maybe the employees are unhappy, or this is not going well you thought it would go to, right? It's not just the one simple thought of approaching it. Like you can have maybe an emotional thought, a mental thought, a physical reason for a lot of different issues, right? And this just comes from firms' problem or problems facing other people's firms. It's like people approaching problems from different angles is something that I've always likened and been really important when you're working on a group project or assessing any issue. And that just happens a lot more with people from different backgrounds. It's very something that's important, and like it's hard to notice when you, I guess we hear in an echo chamber, people that have the same similar backgrounds, but you really notice it when you have people from different areas, backgrounds, and thought processes. It really stands out when you look at different angles, and I think it's super important. It makes problem solving more dynamic, right? You could say easier, but for sure more productive. I think that's the key.
Right.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of firms, they try to like evaluate and process this with a lot of their situational judgment tests and a lot of the personality tests that you take. Do you think that preparing for any of these would be beneficial for candidates looking to enter the finance industry at all?
I'd say for sure you have to to clarify like on the situational stuff. Like, yeah, a lot of that questions are kind of proposed and asked to you, right? The behavioral stuff is kind of obvious. Stuff like that sticks out, and I guess it's even I would say even more prevalent, but it's still something that's super important to like most interviews and like preparing for jobs in finance. Just being able to handle not only like situational dynamic situations, situational questions and behavioral questions. It's just like being able to be adaptable in a situation, right? So like, hey, you have a project going with a group project, it's not going well. You have a partner that's not doing his part. how do you approach it? How do you fix it? Stuff like that, which is a situational. Also, could mix with some behavioral stuff too, right? How do you handle uncertainty? How do you handle partners? How do you handle team managers? Stuff like that. And they build upon that in situational questions, right? Well, you're 2 days late on this thing. How do you navigate this? How do you turn that kind of situation around, right? So that all kind of ties in together, where your behavioral things kind of tie in situational questions, and they're all just as important to build. And that comes with interview skills. That comes with like just knowing what you've seen in your schoolwork, what you've seen outside of work, and they all kind of matter. So you can bring problems that you had in school, bring problems that you had in life, you can bring problems that you had in other clubs and organizations, right? So preparing that by using scenarios you see in everyday life, classwork, stuff like that's always important to prepare for it, and it helps loads in interviews and in conversations.
Right. It's fascinating. I really like your approach on how you think about these things, because I feel like a lot of, like people will tell you like, hey man, you got to focus on the technical questions. You got to focus on the numericals. You got to focus on all this other interview prep. And I feel like a lot of candidates and a lot of students that are applying for these jobs really look over the basic things, the basic skills that are not overtly stated, but are underlying, like your leadership abilities and these ability to get along with people and these abilities to communicate properly. So the fact that you brought that up is very interesting.
Yes. No, it's super important. I mean, you touched on it, well said. Technical things and the technical and the specific details and the numeric things are super important and matter as well. But the flip side to that is where they kind of come to a head where they're looking to train and teach that on you on the job or wherever you kind of go with in the industry. So while that knowledge, you need for sure a baseline for that kind of stuff, as it makes it even easier when you have more than a baseline of knowledge on the numerical and quantitative stuff. Or whatever field you're trying to get into, just knowing the ins and outs plus even more. But when behavioral situational stuff is that a lot of people you're going to be working with have that knowledge or are going to learn that on the job or internship. So it makes it even more important to stand out with behavioral situational stuff, because that's where a lot of, like I said, the diversity of thought comes into check too there. So that's where they get to see, like, why is this person in this team work better than the same person on that same project, right? We both understand the quantitative stuff, both understand the numerical stuff, but why will they handle it differently? That's why it's just important to learn that aspect as technical aspect as well. So,
very good points. So moving on to another question, where do you see the finance industry heading in towards of the candidates that they're going to be taking in and the way that they structure their people and their teams?
That's a great question. So I guess I want to caution before I dive too much into that. I'm still learning and living, so I have no whole sweeping judgment over the financial industry.
No, yeah, man. It's just to get your opinions. We're not going to grade you on anything.
I'm with you. I just want to kind of give like a little disclaimer there. But with that being said, I mean, obviously you're going to kind of jump to I guess the obvious and the apparent. Fintech and finance technology, something that's like kind of sweeping and kicking its run and adjusting it too. But honestly, I see a lot more like emphasis on needing to understand obviously coding languages and stuff like that. Because a lot when it comes to like the analysis in fields like that, if it's program languages like Python or R or C++, you're going to need to understand, if not know how to do processes and make things in those programs. It's going to be just understanding the languages and how it's written and how to convert conventional thought into coding languages. So that's for sure going to stick it out. So you need to know that, as that's obviously where most things are going, but especially in the finance industry, the robo-advisor, the fintech aspect is clearly shifting there. Now, doesn't mean it's going to take over stuff like that, but you can kind of see now when it comes to Wall Street and maybe the Wall Street bets thing and the stuff that happened a month ago. It's very clear that you see like the access to information is wider and greater, and the emphasis on connectability, internet knowledge, coding knowledge is emphasized, and more important, which is most industries, right? But finance especially, because when it takes that quantitative aspect of finance, it's for sure going to be more coding, technology, investor, robot, stuff like that. So that's the obvious thing shifting to. I'm not going to make an estimate of how much or the market share, all that stuff, or the diversity, of your work on a daily basis. But it's kind of obvious, and it's going to lead to that area. But yeah.
So there's going to be a lot of heavy focus on technology, and all these candidates are going to probably assuming are going to be expected to know a lot of these technical skills, which is fine, because I feel like JSOM particularly prepares us for these with all our ITS classes and stuff that we have to do. I mean, I don't really have any other friends in different universities, but I would say that they aren't taking the same level of technology classes. But I mean, who knows?
I can vouch for other friends. I can vouch for you, by the way.
Yeah.
The other friends that go, they're not heavy focus on the quantitative aspect as we are sometimes.
You brought up a club earlier in our conversation. Would you like to expand on that, the new club?
I will kind of keep it. I'm not gonna go too much into it as it's still in development and processing here. But it's just I've noticed with it's not my total idea, but with other JSOM JSOM students here, that there's been a need or niche for a club focusing on like quantitative finance, technology in it. So filling that gap is the goal of this new project that I'm working with and talking to people with right now. But that's kind of what we're looking at next fall to introduce that, as with this weird and craziness as we had last 2 semesters.
Right.
So normalcy would help to introduce this, but there's been a need for combining that quantitative aspect with finance, and that's something that's been trying to fill with this new club idea. So yeah, that's something that I don't want to jump into too much too, but it's interesting, and I brought it up.
Yeah, I mean that sounds like a great idea. It does. I feel like that is something that is needed on campus. You've got the Financial Leaders Association, but they're primarily look at more of the let's help you get an internship kind of thing.
Yeah, straight.
Whereas, but there is a need for clubs of teaching people how to be able to do these.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's more nuance. That's the good beauty of JSOM. I think that like it's like I say, it's not super established, but also really good school to where you can do that, like start a new club or find new niches and nuanced things within the industries that you have in JSOM. And some schools either have too much of it or not enough where you can make an impact, or just everything's super nuanced and harder to find. So here, it's good that you can do that and fill niches and stuff like that. So that's the beauty of JSON sometimes.
Yeah, let's going back on that whole thing we talked about earlier about how you're able to make an impression on the school, whereas probably at a larger school, making a club would take 2,000 signatures and a group of professors to back you up on that one.
100%.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. And you previously mentioned that will you be working with JP Morgan this upcoming summer or attempting to break into JP Morgan this summer?
So yeah, that is actually a fellowship program, and it'll be this summer with JP Morgan at their New York office. But yeah, it's a fellowship professional development. It's not certainly an internship now, but it's for you to get your feet wet and develop skills that not only translate into JP Morgan, but firms in general in that specific asset wealth management firm. So yeah, it's definitely a fellowship program this summer. It's a 6 weeks program. So that's what I'm looking at now. But a lot of people that are in the program obviously tend to be retained by JP the next summer.
That's big, man. Congrats, dude. That's super huge, especially coming from UTD and like getting into New York from Dallas is quite complicated. So the fact that you're able to do that this year is huge. You're pretty much paving ways to like a pipeline to get into New York, because I feel like that's a lot of the finance students' end goal is to hopefully end up in New York. But we do not have a lot of alumni connections in New York. We have a great alumni network in Dallas, but 100%. It's very complicated and very difficult to break into New York. So I applaud you there on doing that. That must have taken a lot of work to do.
But no. Thank you. Truthfully, I don't want to get too much into it because it's super recent and we're just getting the offer down now. But also, I would have even more knowledge coming back once it's done. But I'm super excited and willing to kind of dive into details as it comes and learn more information about it. But now, that was very well said. But
yeah, it's super big, super big. Have you suggested any other locations like abroad? Because I know you have such a historic past of moving around. So have you thought about, possibly starting a career abroad?
That's actually, really good question. Because you beat me to it and kind of in my thoughts previously. So I'm actually having some people, and honestly doing JSON that I know through here that are older. They were going to study abroad, and I know a friend that's studying abroad in Germany, right? And obviously it was canceled because of COVID, and that's unfortunate. I'm crying tears for them. But that being said, I'm planning and hoping a lot of factors going into it, but spring 2022, be able to study abroad would be fantastic. And talk to people through JSOM, which I'm fortunate and blessed that JSOM has a lot of opportunities like that. Reach out to the right people, like I mentioned earlier, is important to find people that study abroad. But I'm hoping by spring 2022 that this year, the next term, so 2 semesters from now, that's open back up. And I'd like to go study abroad in Europe and use that to not only network, but learn their culture and obviously build a network over there as well, which some people have done, and I've reached out to them. But I think it's super important, and obviously this is a unique situation with this global pandemic. But that being said, that's a great question. Now, I would like to start that by studying abroad, and there's a lot of that in JSOM. I believe it's the school with the most people that study abroad.
Right.
All the schools here, I believe so. So yeah, so that's something I want to tap into. And that's what I was touching on earlier when knowing what the school can offer you. And I think a lot of people come sometimes that, man, I know what it can offer you, and it becomes confusing, and it's kind of easy to just, I guess, move on. But finding the right people and finding who to talk to is super important. And even I don't even know who to talk to in every single aspect too, and I'm still learning and growing, trying to figure that out. But some people I think it's just knowing who to find for certain things because they're there, they're there like a lot of the I guess you see more established schools. They have more than you think sometimes. So that's why I'm trying to use that connection to study abroad and start the career abroad. That'd be super
I mean,
super awesome.
That's super cool. That's super cool. Do you have a particular location in mind? Like a dream job destination?
A dream job. That's a great question. I'm biased because I used to live in Germany, so I'd be awesome. I actually my number one place right now would be looked in Germany.
Okay.
Obviously, I'm looking at so Germany as a whole, the states around there, maybe North or South Germany, Munich or even Cologne or obviously Berlin. But that being said, as well, you got France is another good option there, which I'm looking at France and Germany. But we're looking at what is that going to be Western Europe because there's a lot of financial capital over there, and obviously with big firms and a lot of like not just JP Morgan but other firms, they tend to offer a lot of relocation if you're in the right place in the right firm, especially in younger years in the career. So I definitely would advise and make a lot of sense to look at a firm that has a lot of locations across the world and they're willing to relocate, which is something I'm trying to position myself.
You could definitely just try to get onto Deutsche Bank early on and then transfer over to their Frankfurt corporate head office. Or hey, there's a PNB Paribas if you're trying to go there too.
100%, man. It's funny. I actually remember back when I was in Germany, I think I was about 30. No, I think about 2030 out of Frankfurt. So that's actually a really familiar place for me as a youth. So I think it's really awesome that you pointed to that. So yeah, that'd be a dream come true, right?
Yeah, man. I think that covers it, man. I had a really good time talking to you. We learned a lot about you. So